Hello, hello, all my lovely members of the Due Date Club, and welcome to the first in our book club series. The book that we're focusing on for the month of October is a book by Lily Nichols called Real Food for Pregnancy. Now, ultimately, the book club is going to be a time where you join me for these sessions and we talk about the book, but we're still new and we're still finding our way around the platform. So rather than waiting for you to arrive when you're not really sure, because we really are still learning this, I thought that what I would do is I would come on and start chatting to you about this book, Real Food for Pregnancy. It is really one of my top favorite books for pregnancy, specifically because nutrition is so absolutely vitally important. One of the things that she actually says in the book is that we actually have the power to lower your chances of developing gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, of delivering prematurely, or becoming anemic purely through the power of eating the right food and understanding the importance of nutrition during pregnancy. So I thought this would be a great book to kick off our book club series with. And remember that it is the book of the month of October. Now we're halfway through, but for those of you who haven't got it, I will share a link when I post this video. And what I'm going to do to get things going is I'm going to read some of the things from the book and start the discussion. Some of you may already have the book, and if you do, I'd love to hear from you what parts jumped out at you, the highlights for you, and just the way that we would discuss a book in any book club. Really, this is what it's about. It's online, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we always have to be together. Ultimately, that is how it will work. Where once a month we will start, have a meeting, talk about the book, but the conversation continues throughout the month as you read through the book, as you find things, and as you share little tidbits that come out, because really that's what this is about, is finding those books that really do assist you to have a healthy, happy pregnancy. So what I love about this book specifically is that she's taken the traditional understanding of what we should and shouldn't be eating during pregnancy, and she's really done some deep research into it and turned a lot of it on its head. And the reason she calls it Real Food for Pregnancy is because she's looking at what is actually real food. So I'm going to start off by reading from a book about what real food is. And as she says, everyone has their own definition of real food. But for the purpose of this book, here's my take. Real food is as close to its source as possible and grown or raised in conditions that maximum nutrient density. So example, fresh vegetables that are in season, that are eaten soon after harvest and grown without the use of any pesticides are going to be far more nutritious than any canned version could ever be. Real food is minimally processed, so it appears just like you would find it in nature. Beyond the above vegetable example, think about dairy products. Cows are naturally meant to graze on grass, and their milk naturally contains fat. So from a real food perspective, full-fat dairy from grass-fed cows is nutritionally superior to low-fat dairy from cows that are fed grains and raised in confinement. The third thing she talks about in terms of real food is that real food often doesn't have a label, like fresh vegetables or meat. But when it does, it's made with simple ingredients and no additives. Now, of course, some purists would argue that real foods don't have labels, but in this busy modern world, you're probably going to be buying a fair amount of food with labels, and that's okay. All we want you to think about is that when you're buying packaged foods, check the ingredients, because if it reads like a list of chemicals, it isn't real food. And what you want to focus on during pregnancy is making sure that the majority of your diet is real food. In a nutshell, real food is made with simple ingredients that are as close to nature as possible and not processed in any way that removes nutrients. At minimum, a well-balanced real food diet for pregnancy includes vegetables, fruit, meat, poultry, fish, seafood, nuts, seeds, legumes, and plenty of healthy fats. Most women benefit from the inclusion of dairy products, but they are not required. And if they agree with your body, your real food diet may also include whole grains. I'm also going to chat a little bit about macronutrients. While micronutrients are the vitamins and minerals that your body needs for other functions, Optimal prenatal nutrition requires that you get enough energy from a good balance of the 3 macronutrients. Now, your 3 macronutrients are your carbohydrates, fat, and protein. All real foods contain a blend of 3 macronutrients, with a few exceptions containing only 1 or 2 of them. So, for example, sweet potatoes are primarily made of carbohydrates, but they do have a teeny amount of protein and almost no fat. Eggs, on the other hand, are mostly protein and fat with no carbohydrates. Many dairy products like full-fat milk and yogurt contain a mix of all 3 macros. And what you want to think about when we talk about our macros is making sure that your diet contains a good balance of macronutrients. And she goes into this in quite a bit of detail, and I'm going to jump around a little bit. But one of the other things that I wanted to talk about today is mindful eating. Because when we think about nutrition, especially in the modern day world, and when there's so many different approaches, it's all protein, no fats, all cut out your carbs. And what Lily Nichol does in A Real Food for Pregnancy is she's talking about a more balanced approach. And one of the best ways of finding that balance is through mindful eating. And it's normal to feel a little bit nervous about eating this way with no strict guidance on portions or calories. But one of the most effective and natural ways to ensure that you're getting the right amount of food for your body is to apply mindful eating techniques, which means listening to the signals your body sends you about food and honoring what it has to say. It means eating when you're hungry and stopping when your body has had enough. Many times we eat on autopilot since we've become disconnected from our body's inner cues, and perhaps because we're responding only to external cues. Sometimes that means we eat everything on our plates, regardless how full we feel. And for many of us, that comes from, being told that we have to finish everything on our plates, or we eat simply because everyone around us is eating, even if our body really isn't that hungry for more food. On the other hand, you might feel tempted to restrict your food because of the fear of getting huge with this pregnancy, and you might begin to avoid eating even when you're hungry. None of these is healthy. When you ignore your hunger cues, you tend to ignore your fullness cues as well. So mindlessly overeating or consciously undereating are equally unhealthy and unsustainable. Luckily, our bodies are incredible teachers and they're always communicating with us. It takes practice to tune into these cues, and I promise that over time you'll learn to trust your body. To begin eating more mindfully, there's a beautiful hunger awareness exercise in the book. The reason I wanted to talk about this today when we talked about this book is because mindful eating is so much about trust, and pregnancy and the way that I approach pregnancy and preparation for birth is about coming back to that place of trust and trusting your inner guidance, your inner GPS, your inner cues, and your intuition as to what you should be eating, what you shouldn't be eating, when you should stop, when you are hungry. And really, this is guiding you to do that with your diet and nutrition. And what I'm guiding you to do is to understand what your body and your baby needs, and also about the signs and symptoms that you experience that can sometimes be uncomfortable or disconcerting or worrying, and being able to tune in and trust those from a point of, is this something that's part of my pregnancy, or is this something that is indicating that I need to get it checked out? So one of the things that she shares with us is that that research has shown that mindful eating and women who practice mindful eating during pregnancy actually tend to eat a more nutritious diet overall, and they consume less junk food. That's on page 84 for anybody who does have the book. So don't underestimate the power of listening to your body, as it really can affect both the quantity and the quality of food that you eat. So this is from chapter 4, where she talks about common sense about foods to avoid list. And this is very common in pregnancy blogs and forums and everything about what you shouldn't be eating when you're pregnant. So if you've been reading up on prenatal nutrition, you've probably seen the lengthy list of foods to avoid, like soft cheeses, raw milk, certain fish, especially raw fish, undercooked meats, eggs with runny yolks, and deli meat are among the most popular do not eat lists. And in some ways, this is prudent advice, because during pregnancy, your immune system makes more incredible adaptations to allow your baby to grow. And as a result, your body becomes slightly more susceptible to infections. But this has also led to a fairly strict prenatal information guidelines around food to avoid, and they don't necessarily have the strong evidence to back them up. So what we're going to look at, and what Lily does in this book, is eating on the safe side versus risking nutrient deficiencies because you're cutting out foods that you actually need. So, avoiding foods that could cause foodborne illness can make it more difficult to meet your prenatal nutrition requirements, especially when it comes to those listeria-forming foods. So while it is true that you are more susceptible to listeria when you're pregnant, it's extremely rare to become infected. And an analysis on listeria risk among pregnant women using data from the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration, the researchers estimate that one case of listeria infection per 83,000 servings of daily meat, or 5 million servings of soft cheese consumed by pregnant women. And that's a really, really, really minimal risk. So aside from missing out on the sheer pleasure of eating really tasty soft cheese or forbidden salami, you could be swapping out nutritious foods for less healthy replacements. And she gives a lovely example of people letting go of eggs in favor of cereal simply because of the risk of possibly getting listeria from eggs, from runny yolks. And while that swap could seem minor, it limits the intake of protein, choline, DHA, iodine, and a variety of other nutrients that are available in eggs. And she's got a whole chapter on eggs, and I really recommend reading that because eggs are really a whole food and they're so important for pregnancy. So it's just about making sure that you're eating them well cooked. So you'd be replacing all the goodness of eggs with a refined carbohydrate, which offers zero benefits and potential risks. So what you would rather do is eat eggs from organic farm or from chickens raised on pasture. Right, so I found that little bit about fermented foods that I wanted to share with you, because she recommends including some fermented dairy like yogurt, kefir, and aged cheese. Fermented dairy products contain more vitamin K2 since the levels of the vitamin increase through the bacterial fermentation. These bacteria, known as probiotics, are beneficial in their own right. In fact, maternal intake of fermented milk products has been shown to reduce the development of eczema and allergic rhinitis, which is another word for hay fever, in infants. Regular consumption of fermented dairy may also reduce the risk of a preterm delivery. If you are lactose intolerant, you're able to eat butter, cream, full-fat Greek yogurt, and aged cheese without any discomfort, since these are lower in lactose. It's really unclear why some women report being able to tolerate dairy in pregnancy, even if they were able to do so before becoming pregnant. And then she does discuss alternative sources of probiotics and calcium and vitamin D and other nutrients in chapter 6. So I think I'm going to end it there for today. And just to say, I really encourage you and I invite you to continue this conversation with me in the book club and in the section where I'm going to post this video. And especially if you have already read the book or whatever it is that you found, I'll continue to share little snippets from the book. I'm also going to share an interview that I did with Lily Nichol about what was in 2018. And I've reached out to her subsequently and asked if she will come and chat to us a little bit more about prenatal nutrition. Have a beautiful day, and I look forward to hearing your feedback about your nutrition journey during pregnancy. And if you have got the book, any of your insights and favorite bits.